In 1962, a mother in the coal camps of Harlan County, Kentucky, could feed 4 children breakfast for 9 cents. 9 cents. 1 egg, day-old bread, bacon grease saved in a coffee can beside the stove. If you were born before 1960, at least one of these breakfasts was on your family's table, and you just never thought to ask what it was called or that it was already disappearing. Number 7. A breakfast made entirely from last night's leftovers was the only hot meal a mining camp of 200 people could afford through an entire winter of shutdowns. The families who ate it every morning were stronger for it than anyone buying cereal at the company store. Number 3 cost 19 cents in 1963. The same preparation now sells in Nashville for $11 and is listed on menus as artisan. These 10 breakfasts kept shift workers upright and children in school when there was almost nothing left in the house. They disappeared one kitchen at a time as television convinced a generation of mothers that a box was better than a stove. Subscribe now, because after number 1, you may never look at your grocery cart the same way again. Let's count down the 10 forgotten poor man breakfasts from the 1960s that nobody makes anymore. 1 thick slice dropped into a hot cast iron pan with a little grease. The edges curled as the heat hit, forming a cup. Mothers cracked an egg right into that cup, covered the pan, and came back 3 minutes later. Done. In the textile mill towns across the Piedmont of North Carolina, in the factory neighborhoods of Detroit and Gary, in every working-class kitchen where the week's groceries had to stretch to Friday. This was Monday morning. A pound of bologna was 29 cents in 1965. 8 slices, 8 breakfasts, 4 cents each. The cup the meat made when it fried was the whole trick. It held the egg. Nothing spilled, no dishes except the pan. Bologna never left American refrigerators. The frying did. Now it is eaten cold, standing in front of an open refrigerator door, and nobody calls it breakfast. Number 9. Government peanut butter on cornbread. Before food stamps reached rural counties in the early 1960s, the government sent commodity boxes, big tins of powdered milk, canned meat, and 5-pound cans of peanut butter that looked and tasted nothing like what grocery stores sold. It was dark, dense, and grainy. It required stirring every time because the oil rose to the top. No sugar, no additives, pure ground peanuts, aggressive, real, and nothing like Skippy. Families in the hollows of West Virginia and eastern Kentucky spread it on cold cornbread before school. Children in Detroit housing projects ate it on government-issue white bread. The can lasted 2 weeks if you were careful with the knife. When the commodity program phased out and families started buying commercial brands, they got something smoother, sweeter, easier, and about half the substance of what the government had been handing out for free. No stove, no cooking. Cold cornbread from last night, crumbled into a bowl covered with whole milk, and 1 spoonful of sugar stirred in. In the Mississippi Delta and across the Tennessee hills, this was what children ate before the school bus came. The cornbread broke apart in the milk and became something between cereal and pudding, soft and sweet, and gone in minutes. If you grew up in the rural South and you are over 65, you remember the sound of the milk hitting the bowl and the way the cornbread started dissolving before you even picked up the spoon. The whole thing depended on someone having made cornbread the night before. When boxed mixes replaced scratch cornbread, this breakfast went with it. Not because anyone decided it should end, but because the ingredient that made it possible had already changed into something that did not crumble right. Southern kitchens wasted nothing. What didn't get eaten Monday got a second life Tuesday. Grits cooked the morning before, stone ground, salted, stirred slow, were poured into a loaf pan while still hot, pressed flat, and left in the icebox overnight. The next morning, a mother sliced them into thick rectangles and laid them in a skillet with bacon grease. The outside went hard and golden. The inside stayed soft. The smell of cornmeal crisping in pork fat at 6 in the morning is specific to a time and a place that most Americans have never visited and will never get back to. Some families poured sorghum over the top. Some didn't. Either way, by 7 in the morning, there was nothing left in the pan. Quick cook grits killed this. They don't set. They don't slice. The whole trick of the second breakfast depends on a grits loaf that holds its shape overnight. And instant grits never will. Number 6. Saltines and Warm Milk. When the pantry was down to almost nothing, there were usually crackers. Saltines broken into a bowl of warm milk with a pinch of sugar. Sometimes graham crackers instead. The crackers dissolved slowly, absorbing the milk until they went soft and thick, a rough pudding that required no recipe and no skill. Children who refused oatmeal ate this. Children who claimed they were not hungry cleared the bowl. In Appalachian farmhouses, in mill worker housing along the Piedmont, in the cold water flats of Chicago's South Side, this was the meal that appeared on mornings when the money had already run out, and payday was still 3 days away. It cost almost nothing and kept children in their seats until noon. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody taught it. Every mother in every hard-pressed neighborhood just knew. Number 5. Toast, dunked in black coffee. My grandfather ate this every morning for 60 years. Not coffee with toast beside it. Toast dunked into the cup, held there, buttered side up, until the bread softened and the bottom half had gone dark with coffee. Then pulled out and eaten before it fell apart. He called it breakfast. I called it embarrassing until I was old enough to understand that embarrassment is mostly just not knowing enough yet. In Italian neighborhoods from South Philadelphia to the north end of Boston, in Croatian and Polish communities along the Ohio River, this was how men ate before the early shift. Fast, hot, and done standing at the kitchen counter. The flavor was bitter from the coffee, fatty from the butter, warmer than anything a cereal box ever delivered. When breakfast moved to the drive-thru, the mug and the toast and the 3 quiet minutes at the kitchen counter went with it. Number 4. Bread and egg scramble. Day-old bread torn into pieces. 1 egg cracked over it in a hot pan with bacon grease. Use a fork to scramble everything together until the egg coats the bread and the bread soaks up the grease. Salt, black pepper. 2 minutes. In the mill towns of the Carolinas and the coal patches of western Pennsylvania, this was the meal you made when there was 1 egg left and the bread had gone a day past good. The stale bread became the best part. It crisped at the edges where the grease hit it, and it stayed soft in the middle where the egg held it together. Children ate it, not knowing it was poor food. It tasted like something made on purpose. One egg was 5 cents. Day-old bread from the bakery sold for less than a fresh loaf. Breakfast for a child cost under a dime, made in less time than it takes to read this paragraph. Number 3. Condensed milk on toast. Eagle brand sweetened condensed milk cost 19 cents a can in 1963. One can lasted 2 weeks. Mothers poured a thin stream over hot toast. It pooled in the low spots, soaked into the edges, and turned the crust slightly sticky. The sweetness was deep, not like sugar, more like caramel, and it ran into the bread and stayed there. Children did not know they were eating something born of a thin pantry. They thought they were eating something special. That same preparation appears now in food magazines as retro French café toast and sells for $11 in cities where the customers have never heard of Eagle brand. Your grandmother did not think it was French. She thought it was Tuesday. Number 2. Pinto beans and cornbread. This is the breakfast no cookbook ever honored because it was never meant to be breakfast. Pinto beans simmered with fatback on Sunday were supper. Monday morning, before the children woke, a mother reheated what was left, crumbled cold cornbread into bowls, and poured beans over the top. In the coal and timber communities of eastern Kentucky, western Virginia, and the North Carolina mountains, this was Monday morning, sometimes Tuesday. Nobody called it a tradition. It was just what you did with what you had. If you grew up in those hills and you are over 65, you remember the sound of that pot going on the stove before first light, and the way the kitchen smelled before anyone else was awake. That smell is not available in any grocery store in America today. Number 1. Fried fatback with cane syrup and biscuits. Salt pork, fatback, dropped into a cast iron skillet and fried slow until the fat rendered and the skin crackled, and the smoke drifting through the house meant breakfast was almost ready. Biscuits in the oven, not from a can. Flour, lard, buttermilk. Cut with a drinking glass by hands that had done it so many times they did not think about it. Cane syrup in a jar on the counter, or sorghum, poured over the biscuits, running into the salt from the fatback on the plate. In sharecropper households across the Georgia flatwoods and the Mississippi Delta, in the tenant farms of the Alabama Black Belt, in mountain communities where the smokehouse out back held everything that would carry a family through winter. This was the morning meal that made everything else possible. A slab of salt pork was 15 cents a pound. 5 pounds of flour was 40 cents. The syrup was 20 cents a jar. 6 people ate for under 25 cents and went to work before dawn. The refrigerated biscuit tube arrived. The cereal commercials arrived. By 1980, a woman who made scratch biscuits every morning was doing something that looked like a choice instead of a necessity. The distance between those two things is where this breakfast quietly disappeared. My grandmother made these biscuits every morning until she couldn't anymore. I stood beside her at the counter and watched her cut them with a juice glass. She never measured anything. Her hands just knew. I tried last winter. I had a recipe printed from the internet. I got the temperature exactly right. They looked right. They didn't taste like her kitchen. If your family still does any of this, if there is a jar of sorghum beside someone's stove, a can of Eagle brand in the back of the cupboard, a cast iron pan that hasn't been washed with soap since 1987, tell me in the comments where you're from. Not just the state, the town, the county, the hollow. Because these weren't eaten everywhere the same way. They belong to specific places and specific people, and those places deserve to be named.